Okay, so here we are at the beginning of 1806. I'm going to go through the interface in some detail. It's funny because, the games that I'm really used to, I have so much of an easier time handling. It's not surprising, it's not that strange. It's just, it's so much harder to pick up a new game. I don't remember it being this hard when I was 20, but maybe it was. I certainly screwed up rules just as much back then. Okay, so the first thing is declaration of war. Now, this isn't where like Turkey declares war on Austria. This is where France or Britain or the coalition declares war and brings some new minor or major power into play. At this particular point, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for anybody to bring new powers into war unless there was some minor that we wanted to get through. And as a matter of fact, all the French forces up in the north here are kind of problematic, but since my focus right now was on defeating England, maybe it makes sense. Okay, so the next thing is the hand building phase, and we've got to go over here to 6.3. Each player is allowed to choose which cards they want to discard here, but also we look at this card assignment table. This is kind of weird. And what we're going to do is this is how many we can have in our hand. So, for example, France is going to get their permanent card off of this. X, I think, means I get one card off of it. So I should keep a count of how many cards I'm getting for each side. I do not have these. I do not have Warsaw. I have Mantua, so now I'm up to 2 cards. It hasn't fallen yet. The Italian Peninsula. I don't have all of it. I don't have Naples yet. I don't have Constantinople. I have not created. I have not created the Confederation of the Rhine. I have not created the Kingdom of Bavaria. I don't have Denmark. Lacaire. Well, that sounds like it's probably in France. I have no idea. This is kind of going to be annoying. I don't know. It might be a C, it might be something else. I just have no idea what the fuck that is. Bordeaux, Lyon. I'm going to count Lacaire. That puts me to 5. Antwerp. I should have Antwerp. Yep, that puts me to 6. Okay, 6 is the base. I don't have Lisbon. I have Madrid because Spain is allied with me. That puts me up to 7. And I think that's it. So let me do a quick recount. Paris, Mantua, Lacaire, Bordeaux, Lyon, Antwerp, Madrid. Yeah. So I'm going to get only 7 cards this turn. One of them, since I have Paris, will be my Napoleon card. But I have to decide if any of these others do I want to discard. I can't discard this, so that's 2 cards. Is there anyone I particularly want to disgrace? Is Charles good in this game? He's okay, but I don't think he's all that worthwhile. So I'll get rid of this one, definitely. I got all these combat cards. The horse artillery doesn't look terribly impressive. Soldiers of Year 2 doesn't look terribly impressive. I'm going to throw some of these combat cards away. What about this Cura Surcharge? I would have liked to have gotten into a combat. I may be getting into one down here. Do I have a Cav General? Murat's a Cav General. +2 on combat is kind of nice. I guess I'll keep that. So I'm going to get 4 more cards into my hand. And now I do the same over with the coalition side. Let's see what we have. We have London, Vienna, Moscow, and that gives us those permanent cards. This is a nice situation because it means if you don't have the power, you don't get their special permanent card. It just links up nicely. Prague, I probably have that. Berlin and Königsberg, I do not. Warsaw, I don't. St. Petersburg, I do. That puts me to 5. Odessa and Kiev, yes. Mantua, no. Yes, I'm up to 7 for Gibraltar. Sardinia and Sicily, yes, I'm up to 8. None of these. French territories, Lisbon, I'm up to 9. Corsairs, I did not put any Corsairs out. I need my fleets right now, as the French. The Free British Fleet is not built. Okay, that can give me a 10th card in the budget phase, or I can buy a 10th card. But right now I'm at 9 cards. 3 of them are these. I actually don't have a choice, but they're all pretty decent cards. I definitely want to hold on to this. So that's 4. I'll get 5 more cards. And so I have more, operational resources. But the next thing is we should be hitting the budget phase. I'm going to take a little break for that because it's just tough for me to go through the explanations nowadays. I don't know why. Now we're on to the budget phase, during which, lots of ums. That's just there. Maybe it's all in here. Yeah, I think it's all baked into the interface, the rules for it. It's just kind of weird because hand buildings kind of refers to a different role and says use that. So each of the major powers, including the neutral majors, gets a production. Minor powers that are in an alliance will also produce some points, as we saw before. Let's start and take a look at, say, Turkey as a major power that's not in play, not really heavily affected here. Now, your points are written here, so Turkey's going to get 4 points of resources to play with. However, each key zone that they don't have cuts them by 4. Now, there's only 1 key zone in Turkey, so and you can't take it away from them. It's their capital. Okay, so, well, you could actually. So they're going to have 4 points to play with in terms of what they can build. And each core that they want to upgrade, I think it's each step costs you 1 point, but I'm not sure. New units are placed, that's set up. Okay. The cost of production. The cost of units is expressed per lost step. Oh, here, we got the cost here. And yeah, core are generally 1. Militia type units are a little cheaper. Elite's going to cost a little more, etc. And this is on a per step basis. Well, I don't think I have any flipped over units, so the Turks can start building new units. Let's build our reserve cav. That's always a useful thing to have. That's going to cost us 2 per. So there's my 4 points. Do armies cost? Yeah, armies also cost. That's going to cost me 4 points. I actually can't have a reserve cav without an army, I think. I'm not sure. All right. Can't see where my army is. Oh, here it is. Okay. I think we'll build just 2 core then. At 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 point per. And where are they placed? They're placed in the capital or non-besieged fortresses of the national territory. Well, I think I'll just set these up in the capital and try to produce a singular force to cope with any possible situations. So that's Turkey. I've taken care of them. Now I've got to kind of remember who I've done and who I haven't. I'll come when I do one of the major powers next, but I've got to cope with Prussia as well. So I'll back off while I do them. They're going to get 5 because they haven't reformed the Holy Roman Empire. I did my builds for Prussia, but I've got another opportunity, not with Prussia, but with the Turks that I forgot to mention. I've got the Grand Vizier. I don't particularly want to bring him into play. He's not a very good leader, I don't believe. I don't know if he's any worse than these others. Well, he's a more defensive than offensive leader. So I'm going to hold off on him because he has, he takes up a stack. If I end up absorbing that stack, he becomes the commander of the army, maybe. That could be a real problem. So I'm going to stay with him off the board. Anyway, I did the points with the Prussians. They rebuilt this unit, built up their other forces, and I don't know which to go with first. I guess I'll go with the coalition first. Now, well, Britain's kind of interesting, but the deal with the coalition, I have the same kind of building for France and Spain as I've done with Prussia and Turkey. But the one other thing that I have to do is I have miners. And I have to kind of look and figure out who's allied and who's not. So if this is correct, no, this is part of Prussia. So I have to count up the number of miners that I have that have the potential for having troops. Now, unfortunately, there's no chart that handles that. All I've got is the board and the counters. And I don't have any plaids. Empires in Arms has, a plaid with all the miners with forces on it or anything. I don't have anything like that, so I've got to kind of, hunt through all the pieces on the board. I think that's a plaid that would be very helpful here. By the way, this is a game where you only produce. You don't have to pay a maintenance cost on anything. There's a lot of games that are like that. I am trying to think if there's a single Napoleonic game that counts maintenance costs in at the strategic level. I can't think of one offhand, but I would bet you the Markham game does. I haven't played it yet, but I think his games tend to include a maintenance cost. There's always a mixed feeling for me about this because clearly armies have a maintenance cost, and the bigger your army is on the field, the more you're going to have to pay for it. That cost is not as high as keeping the units on, as building new units up, obviously, but it is a significant cost in place. And on the other hand, in general, it has very little effect. Your army, your countermix limits, if you have those, which you do not in Empires in Arms, and it makes Empires in Arms a particularly egregious case of this, end up being sort of the upper level to which your maintenance costs could affect your situation. This game has no limits, though, other than the countermix limits. And that's kind of weird because to some extent the expansion of national territory should expand the size of the potential army. Of course, the loss of national territory should reduce it. All kinds of stuff like that. So there's some weird things going on here. The net effect may be it's not worth the effort to track all that in a game where there's going to be a lot of warfare. And in this game there will be, because it's a two-player game. But in something like Empires in Arms, where you can build up as many troops as you like, and the players may have incentives to stay out of wars, you might have something like a Russia building up this humongous army where they can fight like 3 wars, lose 3 wars essentially, very easily before they enter into a war. It's less interesting for them because in a year they can rebuild their army. A country like Prussia really doesn't want, because they don't have they don't have a capacity for a large army, simply in the matter of they don't have the production that creates it. But anyway, you end up with these highly unreasonable situations in some cases where someone has just stocked such a large army. Is it unbelievable? Well, not in most cases, but someone like Turkey, who has a specific limit to the size of the number of army pieces of core they can have in the game in Empires and Arms, can end up building a lot of regular units as garrisons, and then they can recover their, regulars at a rate that historically they weren't able to do. And it feels a little funny, and it clearly is not representing the detail of what's actually going on as well. But again, it may not be worth the effort. All right, let's count up what we have here in terms of miners with troops, and there's really no way to do it except to hunt through all my force pools. So there's 1, there's 2. Bavaria, Württemberg, I can't count if they have multiple units. 3 for the Dutch. Okay. 4 for the Italians. So right now I'm at 4, but that may not be all. There may be others that I have here that are in play. I have not created Westphalia. I lost track of my number though. Italy I already counted. Poland doesn't exist. The Swiss are mine, and they're a protectorate. I think protectorate counts since North Italy has troops. So that puts us up to +1 on whatever we were, which was I think 4. So we probably have 5. And then I may have some more hiding over here, if I can find these. Hesse and Baden. I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Hesse. Baden is mine, so I think I'm at 6. That means I get 3 steps of builds. Well, there's 1. Let's upgrade these. There's 2, I guess. I don't really know if Holland is what I need to build up. And I guess I'll build some Swiss. There's 3. Because I get half of what the total is. I'll build these in Zurich. Okay. Instead of Holland, and we have not done diplomacy yet. Okay. So at this point then I'm going to do the major nationals. And France has a whole load of generals that I can bring in now that it's 1806, right? Just because. And some of them are useful, some of them maybe not so much. But I'd like to get some of these core, well, I can move this for 1. I can't move it with a general for 1, so there's reasons to leave things without a leader on them. Dane's in the interesting position. They only had 4 points. They could only spend 3 of them. They don't have enough troops at this point to build up more. And in addition, their 4 points means they don't have enough to build a fleet. They would have to have some way to get additional resources. Now, I could give them a resource from France, actually, which I think I want to do instead. I think this is what I had. And I want to build an extra Spanish fleet because the game has taken... Oh, I don't have an extra Spanish fleet. Okay, we won't do that then. I was going to say the game has taken a turn towards, you know, with the invasion of Britain, towards the navies being really important, and an extra fleet would be really useful to me at this point. In fact, Britain's going to have to build fleets. Probably France is, and that's going to change the whole nature of this game. Also, the fact that Austria wasn't defeated in the first year. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I don't remember what I was going to say. All right, and we can see the build-ups. The Austrians had most of their army. They actually had points spare after they built. The Russians built their whole army. We got a... Wittgenstein has a large force ready to move into play and reinforce. And this is actually a kind of dangerous situation for France. Like I said, the game has taken a real left turn because of the invasion of England. The English spent all their points on land units. They took their free boat instead of a free card. Just because we're worried about the navies, but we need to spend all our resources on land units, because normally with 6 points we'd get a fleet and maybe a corps or whatever. But yeah, it's tough to deal with this situation, so we're kind of handcuffed. But there's quite a large continental army moving into play, and now if we can use a card and bring the Prussians in, we may be able to defeat France while we hold Napoleon at bay up in England. I think we are done, except that I may have cheated. Okay, I just have to follow stacking if it's at home. If I'm placing into an army, I get to put 2 steps, including reserve cavalry, to strengthen reduced units. I don't think I can put new units into there. I could throw some depots into the army, though. So I'm gonna actually give these guys an extra depot instead. And I could throw some subordinate generals in. I don't see much point in that in any of these cases. Is there an army that's weak? You know, the army of Italy is weak. I think I want to give them a subordinate. We'll give them Bernadotte. That could be useful. Okay. And I guess we're up to the diplomatic phase. Nobody wants to remove units from the board. Although there's reason to, like the Russians could get this out of there. Hey, it's not really serving me much purpose, and I'll get to rebuild it. Okay, we'll take that off. Because it's a long way from home, and it's really not doing anything. You could argue the same with this unit, but I don't want to... You know, if the naval war goes badly, I don't want St. Petersburg falling, right? Just because I didn't have a garrison there. So yeah, that'll bring us to diplomacy, and I need to take a kind of significant break. For diplomacy, the coalition's going to play a 3-point card for a Walchan. This is a decent card, I guess. It's a one-time landing somewhere. But I don't know how exciting this really is, and historically it wasn't that impressive. I don't really want to destroy a 3-point card. So using this for diplomacy seems reasonable. I don't think the French have any diplomacy they terribly want to do. Look at the diplomatic table, see if there's anything. Turkey would be interesting. However, let's think about that. Because that might draw off some of Austria and Russia's strength. The problem is, it might also just mean Turkey gets defeated. And Well, interestingly, conquest of Austria by the Empire. I don't think conquest by a coalition gives any points, so it might be interesting actually. There. How are these pulsed? That's the real question. I don't know. Let me think about whether the French want to do one. But the coalition definitely wants to do one on Prussia, which they have a +2 on. French likewise don't expect to be conquering Poland anytime soon, so getting this card back into the deck might make sense as well. So they're going to go for the Turkish. Okay. So let's see what happens here. The diplomatic influence bonus, the bonus on the event card played for the occasion. Well, neither of these have one. If it's a major power defeated, okay, so there were no battles, no previous defeats. This is bringing them in the first time. So let's take a look at the French one. Now, in order to succeed, we need to get a 6 or more, I believe. Yes. Okay, so let's see the French attempt at Turkey, which is probably the least effective, but it's +1. We do not bring Turkey in, and then we lose this card. For the coalition, bringing Prussia in, it's a +2. Somewhat more likely. And we do. Now, Prussia does not give us a card. However, it will later be giving us a card because we control Berlin and Königsberg. We just don't get a permanent card out of it. But that's okay. And that brings Prussia into the game. I should probably note that in some way, I guess. Oh well. I don't have... I take this away. And now Prussia is a part of the coalition alliance system. I don't want to use the alliance markers, overuse them. Okay, and that's going to bring the Prussian army into play as well. Now the Prussian army is facing, what's this lawn up here, which I don't think anybody wants any miners to come into this. So then we go to neutral major powers movement. I can move the neutrals, forced ally or submitted. The Empire moves Spain and Turkey, and the coalition moves the major powers of other allies. Well, I guess that's just Turkey. I don't know if I have any movement I want to do. Let me see. The final action is strategic redeployment. We start with Spain. You don't need a general. So I'm going to redeploy these guys. 1, 2, 3. And I might want to gather forces here. Mountains cost 2, I think. Can I strategic redeploy across mountains? I don't know. Looks like I can. Position myself to take on the Portuguese and to take Gibraltar, while the Brits are having trouble. Next one's Prussia gets to redeploy. Well, yeah, we want to do that. Brunswick can hold 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, he's got an army, so he can hold this many. I've got too many. No, I don't. I have the depot there. I have to be careful because It looks like, to me it's like, when I look at this, I see 4, and I think I can have 4 counters. No, I can have 4 steps, which is probably 2 counters. Okay, so that's the Prussian redeployment. The Austrians, now, redeployment is... I can go through friendly zones, so the Russians can redeploy deeper into Austria, for example. So our next one is the Austrians. Let me think about this a little bit. I can't really move these guys. I will stay where I am with the Austrians. The Russians. The Russians want to redeploy. This thing can move 3, 1, 2. Feel like I'm more needed in the Prussian side of things than I am on the Austrian side. 1. Oh, we got some. Oh, that's the cab. That's why. 2, 3. Got their forces there. That sounds good enough. British redeployment, nothing too impressive there. The French redeployment, I think I really don't want to be moving these. French redeployment's more interesting, and I have to think about this a bit. French redeployment was kind of complicated. I saw Cyr down here. Do I want to pull him out of Florence, or is he doing a good job for me? That's hard to tell. Messina got reinforcements from Ney. Ney himself moved up here to face the Austrians, I guess. He's really not enough to hold them. Just like Laon here, we got some reinforcements. I left the Dutch back here with Marmont. Soule coming up with additional forces, trying to get what we can into place, but I probably overstacked here and could have put more force against the Austrians and Prussians. Things look really bad in Europe for the French. I think this may not be a good run of the game just because of the invasion and a bad starting hand as well. But Napoleon shifted down. His goal right now is probably to take a port, get himself into supply, and try to operate, but he's got to worry because the English fleets are going to be playing around. The game takes a very different tenor than I think it would traditionally, because, or following a more historical model, because the French are going to be a threat in England as long as they're there. They could end up conquering England. That's not an automatic victory as it is in some games, but it's going to be a significant blow to knock them out of the war for a little while. And then I can, of course, slide my way back into France and defeat the people I should be worried about. I think that is the end of the interface, which means we're moving to something, the regular activations for the turn. Now, as far as I know, yep, the Empire is always first in each activation round. So we can flip the counter to indicate whose turn is coming up on any given time, so I can walk away between card plays, which I've been doing. Roll into the first activation. This game's CDG-ness is causing problems. There's a core problem with any CDG, which is kind of the, hey, if I can play cards and devote them, to one front instead of another, whatever, you may get some very unbelievable situations, and this game seems very susceptible to that. The naval operations, the French invasion of Britain, that put all of this European action on hold. The British had to defend London. The French had to try to get their supply lines in place. Nothing happened in Europe. Some games that may make more sense than others. In some games, like on this same topic, GMT's Napoleonic Wars, you don't have that problem because each country has its own little activation pile. That can cause some definite issues, especially in a small number of players, with people trying to keep track of all the different hands and everything. But in some games also, 30 Years' War, perhaps, Amateurs in Arms, it may not feel that terribly wrong that certain fronts are just completely silent for a year or two. But this does not seem reasonable. It just does not. And yeah, maybe the particulars of the invasion of Britain caused this in a way that other situations wouldn't. But it really kind of is leading me to believe this should not have been designed as a CDG. Anyhow, the French are going to spend their point to move Napoleon. He is out of supply. I guess I could toss a little out of supply marker on. They don't really matter because they don't have much carryover. And then he's going to move one. Now, there's a potential the Brits could intercept him while he's still out of supply here. He's got 4 movement points, I believe, with his army. Yeah. Well, no, wrong army. He's got 4 movement points with his army. I don't know that I want to play a British card here. I think I can use them better to... Well, see, the problem is any naval activity eats up so much in the way of cards, and that's part of what happened. 1 per fleet, well, you're going to play a 3-point card to move your fleet. I'll let him keep going. 2, he's going to drop a little flag there. I really should have. 3, he's still not in supply, and I think the Brits may want to make their interception here. I know how big his force is, I guess. There's no hidden. So he's got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 here. And we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah. Except Moore can't command this force. And I cheated. I needed to build the Peninsular Army. Let us get rid of one of these core. That would have been worth, I don't know if it's worth 1 or 2. A core is only worth 1, an army is worth 2. Yeah, I needed to build the army. See, the problem is 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Yeah, I couldn't carry this. Alright, so we'll get rid of a core and replace that with the Peninsular Army. I was juggling these decisions in my head and did not do something that works. All right. So now the question is, hey, for an intervention, I need a 2 movement point card. It's not likely I'm going to do it. This is one of my only 2. And again, this is going to eat up my points, the activations that I can do in the turn. But I feel I need to do this. I need to fight Napoleon while he's out of supply. So I don't have cav superiority. My initiative's not better. The zone's not difficult. I need a 5 or better. I don't get it, and I waste 2 of my action points. Okay. And now for the 4th movement point, I put another control marker over here. And that's going to turn the action phase over to the Brits. Spend the Admiralty card this time. I don't know how much they needed that, but they needed to move this and these 3 actually. These had to come back out to cut this supply here. Otherwise, I think I accidentally, basically I put those guys under blockade and I can't afford to. I need my fleets out patrolling to prevent the crossing here. I also did a couple of blockades in the south, but those don't really terribly help me. The main thing is I need to close this route off that the French have. Well, I'm outnumbered. That's not going to work well for me, but it is going to mean the French are going to have to spend a big card to move their 2 or 3 of their navies up to attack there. The Nelson counter up here, so I had to move 3 of my navies in my opinion, and I ended up sinking it, but I used up my 3-point card. Again, nothing's going to happen in Europe. They're just going to sit there watching the boats play around. Now the Brits have a real problem. I could move my 3 fleets out of here, or I could gather. Actually, this one's not important anymore. So I can move 1, 2 into here, move 1 of these into there, and maybe sail 1, 2, 3, 4 up into there, and get enough force to defeat that. And still have enough that I can perhaps hold off the 3 French fleets from coming out of Cherbourg or whatever. Yeah, in order to attack for the channel. But here's the problem. These are my 2 spaces where supply is important. Here, it's not so important anymore. Although here it would be, but this is on the channel. So from here, I can only trace as far as this location. And there's no controlled French fortress or anything there. If there was a depot, fixed depot in place there, well, I could intervene in that. So I feel like I'm going to have to play a 3-point Navy card and try to wipe out the French Navy here. It doesn't work terribly well either. The reason being, I really need my Admiralty card at this point. The reason that doesn't work is that if I move this fleet in, it can get intercepted and there's an immediate battle. Likewise, you know, I can't spread coming from all kinds of different directions. I've got to move this fleet. I do that, and France, Napoleon's in supply. London probably falls. My army is defeated. Maybe it gets away, but it just doesn't look pretty. So it looks like Napoleon's gambit in England's actually going to work. What does that mean? I think that means I have to ignore England and make my move over on the European front instead. Okay. Brunswick marched into Hanover. You can see he left behind a screening force to cover the siege because he chased Lannes away. Now Lannes could have withdrawn into here, but that would have meant Marmont would be in command. Having Marmont in command, and Lannes would be retired. Having Marmont in command probably is no better than having less forces. In fact, having Lannes in command is better. So I withdrew up to here. Brunswick still had an extra movement point, so he came forward. Now, the disadvantage was I could have fought at the river line, which would have given me a terrain advantage, but I was hoping to withdraw twice and not have to fight this round. Because, of course, the Allies had to play a 2-point card to move any of their commanders. We're going to have a fair-sized force here that's going to face off. Let's take a look. I guess we'll do the combat situation again. So we've got a base force of 4 for the French, the Prussians, and yes, Brunswick is a 7, so he can command 14 steps. He only has 10 with him. So that's 2 to 1. Actually, that rounds up to 3 to 1 on here, which means Brunswick is going to be at +2. And Lannes going to be at -2. That's the base. Now, beyond that, cav superiority. Neither side has any cav commanders, I believe. Pretty sure Brunswick is not. He's an army commander. Terrain effects. No, we withdrew. We could have had that. Everybody's in supply. Elite units. Okay, we can decide to put an elite. Well, the French are definitely putting an elite forward, and so are the Prussians. So both sides get a +1. General's effects. Brunswick's a +1, and I am not going to throw in one of my sub-commanders. They don't help me. Lon is a +2. And he, of course, doesn't have any sub-commanders because he's not an army. Okay. And now we get to choose combat cards. And then first the attacker gets to choose. Well, ooh, I didn't realize I had that sucker. I do not have a combat card, and I have to announce that ahead of time. I could have slowed another one. I have a real problem with reaction cards. Can't play this. This is useless because I can't bring those extra forces in without a worse commander. Kira Surcharge I do not want, so we're good. Okay. And the resolution of the battle. And our morales are 5 and 3, if that matters. Now for resolution, we don't remember how we do this anymore. It's 2 dice each. Okay. Should be better. Use the black dice for the Prussians. So the French are at +1, the Prussians are at +4. We don't know how big this is. 4 to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That is, I believe, a medium battle. I don't think this... I haven't done this on a smaller battle. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter how small the smallest force is for a medium battle. Okay, so we got a 7, which means we're going to get a 1+, and they got a 2, 6. They got a 1. Both sides take a step loss on their elite units. The Prussians have been defeated. Oops. Demoralization chance. Tactical value of the general is +1. The difference is -1, so we're at 0. Combat card. Okay, I have a pursuit card. It's an extra die in pursuit. That's if the damage actually happens. So I think we're at even, trying to roll a 3 or less. We do not, so we've been demoralized. That gets us one of these evil black flags. And the tactical value of the general commanding the force, that's +2. This is going to be 1 die. Each step of reserve cav, none. Each cav general, 1. None. So I have a +2 to the die roll. I could play this card. It's not a bad card. Many of the combat cards are 1-point cards. This is goes away if I play it, and I might really need this card. I think I'm going to hold, because Brunswick is a 2-point general. He's going to have trouble doing much more. So I'm just at +2 here. I get a 7. That means I do, what, 1 extra loss in excess of 6. So I cause an extra loss, and then the defender is going to have to retreat into the zone from which he entered, which is back in Hanover, and absorb those troops. For supply now, I'm going to use my 1 freebie point, get rid of this out of supply marker. I'm in supply from multiple directions, really. And I'm just going to march in and go after more. Or decides not to try to withdraw. A withdrawal might have made sense if I wanted to try to cut the supply and, you know, hope for the best that way. But I'm going to just go for this because I don't feel like I can keep spending points trying to defend Britain. God. Alright, combat odds are 9 to 7, which works out to 1 to 1, so nobody's going to get anything. Cav superiority. The French have the reserve cav. They have 2 corps of that. The Brits do not. So that's going to be 1 point for the French. Terrain, no, we didn't cross the river. Supply check, we're both in supply. Elite units, we're both going to commit an elite unit. In fact, the French are committing their guard. This is that important. So that gets them +2. General's effects on battles. Okay, Moore is a +1 on defense. Actually, I think there's another general because there should be another general, but I screwed that up. Napoleon is +3, and I'm going to use Davout in this, so that's 5 more. This is getting ugly. Okay, morales are 5 and 4 respectively. We need to worry about the size. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 7 it was. That's a 16. That's going to put us on a medium battle. Okay. And now combat cards. The French have to choose first. I'll use my Cura Surcharge. I do not have a Cav General present. No, I do have one present. I'll use the Cura Surcharge. So that adds 2 more. And this actually stays in the deck, unfortunately. But a 1-point card is useless for anything but combat. So it's +10 to +2. I didn't realize how ugly this was going to be. So it's 18 to 6. 18 is going to be a 4C+. 6 is going to be a 1. Well, the 1 is the Imperial Guard. But the 4C+, this was my lead unit. It takes 1. Whoa! They get better if they flip over. That must be a counter mistake. Oh well. I guess I've actually got a 5 morale. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are going to be the losses. The English have to make a morale check. They just lost London. Okay. +1 for the commander. Three, they hold morale, but they still have to withdraw. Now, where do they retreat? Into an adjacent zone under friendly control? No. I don't believe. Yeah, no. An unbesieged controlled fortress, an adjacent zone controlled by the enemy but free of enemy units. Yeah. I guess we'll withdraw this way. Napoleon won the battle. He gets a little control marker. Leader loss check for Davout. He survives. It's a good thing. Kind of don't want to lose Davout. We have no pursuit because there was not a demoralization. And things are looking very, very bad for the English. Supply still traced from down here. That could be cut by land, conceivably. Since the French attacked through here, I couldn't go there. Actually, instead I could retreat here. I think I'll do that instead. That puts me closer to the French supply line, which might cause problems. And the French only had 1 point for the round because they took a freebie card. So we'll go to the coalition turn. English spend a 2-point activation card, Austrian home card. Clear this space, not really necessary. Move into here. They've got another movement point to clear that. Conceivably, they could have saved up and attacked instead after clearing this. So they could have saved this movement point. In fact, I think that makes sense. Well, see, here's the thing. We can kind of starve the French out here, and we wouldn't lose London. We'd be on the defensive. So, no, we're going to do it this way. the French are going to discard a 1-point card so that they can have an interception chance. Their interception, and yeah, I'm going into way more detail than I want. Cav superiority +1, leadership brings me up to +4, is almost assured. In fact, it is assured. Okay, does Napoleon want to leave troops behind? I don't think I have to, because I'm coming from a different space. I'll be forcing the English into either Wales or Cornwall, because I control the London space. So, we get to fight again. English army was demoralized and wiped out in the pursuit. And now we're on the last good weather turn, French side of it. Right. Well, looking at the game situation, it seems apparent that France is going to conquer Britain. What does that mean? Damned if I know. Obviously, peace conditions are going to be applied, etc. But after that, what's the effect on Britain? And there's no real discussion of any special effect on Britain here. However, Britain is the coalition player. It seems like there needs to be some sort of special rule to handle this. And in fact, if we look over at the diplomacy, Britain and France do not have a status. If you're playing, you know, France could be conquered as well. I assume it would be a bad idea, because the automatic victory is if the coalition controls all the key zones of the national territory of France. If they defeat France, they wouldn't do that unless if they create a surrender, they wouldn't do that. Because those key zones return to France. So I would guess that before the conquest, although the conquest I believe is done before the victory check, before the conquest is completed, you would say, hey, France has been defeated. Okay. But for the Allies, oh no. No, that's only in an automatic victory only. Oh, that's a victory only at the end of the game that the coalition can win by controlling all the national territories of France. So, yeah, they could knock France out, and I think the same kind of situation happens if France gets knocked out, where the rules don't really handle what's going to happen. Now, I would guess what does happen is the forced peace, which is sort of part of the effects of peace on a major power, will apply to Britain or France if pushed into this. But they would still get to continue to play. And maybe, although I don't think, keep their national power card as the freebie. I don't think they would get that because they wouldn't be part of the coalition or part of the empire anymore temporarily. So that's where you have it. This is unfortunate because, in a sense, the return of Napoleon is what would happen if France is defeated. Kind of how I see this. After an enforced peace, Napoleon shows back up, although probably in less time than the enforced peace, given that it took him about a year to come back, and then launches anew. Well, the game ends in 14 with the assumption that you have to defeat Napoleon by then. But as it stands here with defeating the Brits, well, there's nothing, you can't do diplomacy on the Brits. They don't have a diplomatic bonus. They don't have a diplomatic location on here. Every other country except France has one. And these are countries that can have no status. So the real question is whether or not France and or Britain just immediately rejoin their side. Britain rejoins the coalition immediately. In which case, defeating them doesn't do you much. It does give you 4 victory points and 3 escalade. You don't particularly want escalade, but it doesn't really knock them out of the war in any sense. I'll get Naples. I can take some national territory, which would be obnoxious to the British. There's no question. I might be able to keep knocking them out and getting victory points that way, which will seem very, very silly. But anyway, was trying to figure out, hey, can I make a demand for like Gibraltar? You know, what can I get out of it? And that is not, that doesn't seem to be the case. I might be able, see, here's what's weird. This is marked as Allied territory, I believe. Britain ally. Whereas Sardinia is Britain national territory, but it actually isn't. It's part of the Kingdom of Sicily. At least in the rules. And there's just so much. Now, I've gone in and dug into the modern rule book, and it didn't answer any of my questions. In fact, it looks just like the old rule book. I don't know if there's a damn bit of difference in it. The one thing that I see is some of the PDFs of the play aids. They added one valuable play aid, which is a summary of effects on Spain. And I don't have that here. Huh. I didn't realize this. I thought this was new as well. The summary of effects on Spain, I don't believe I have, so that could have filled the backside of this page. And they probably looked at it and after some play realized, hey, there's so many special effects on Spain. Why don't we make something that describes those? Anyway, I think what I'm going to go with is the enforced peace, giving France a little bit of a respite so that it can deal with the continental powers. And it only makes sense. Look, I mean, if Britain can only rebuild what they can get in a turn, Napoleon's just going to keep slamming him and give 4 points every single year off of Britain, and the game's essentially over. I don't really buy that. Britain scrambles to stay alive still, I guess. The French played a freebie point and launched Messina here against Charles. He was repulsed. Pretty much a close battle. They both got the same result. The Brits pay a 3-point card. Now, what's important about this is they're holding the weather gauge in case the French come out for a chance to win a battle here. But the Brits managed to defeat the French, drive them into the port. They have them blockaded, and this is huge because there's now no supply, and the English can continue to fight on as they starve the French in London. Okay, well, that means as we move into bad weather, the French are going to have to consider whether or not they want to break one of these fleets. This is probably the easiest to break. They're going to need a 3-point card for that, though. And they don't have one. We can do it in the winter, but and we don't suffer any attrition until we try to do something with Napoleon. I think I'm actually mistaken there. All its key zones are controlled by the enemy. These zones must be able to trace supply line for the conqueror, or all its key zones except one are controlled by the enemy and the defender. The defeated does not control the capital and has no undemoralized forces. Nothing about supply in that second option. I will check to see if that's been changed in the updated rules, but that would indicate that Napoleon would be able to conquer France, conquer England anyhow. Let's go see. Indeed, the rules are the same. Now, I immediately started thinking, hey, time to pick on the demoralized army. The problem is demoralized armies can always withdraw. In fact, they must. So I can't really pick on him. I could chase him out of Hanover, where he's got a siege in place, and that might be of some value. But that's it. I can't really launch an attack, and I was considering coming in, relieving Marmont, taking the Dutch troops into Hanover with me. But I'm not sure that's my optimal move at this point. I may instead not play a card and launch an attack on Chucky again. I don't know. I've got an army, so if I've got room, I could suck the Swiss in, except that's through a pass, and that's not allowable. So I don't really know what to do. Certainly I could play and have Ney go take Mac on. Ney and Mac are not particularly the best leaders in the world, though. Messina is repulsed again by Charles, and at this point Charles takes Mantua, triggering a siege. Actually, I only need one die roll. That gives him a couple extra movement points. Do I want to keep going? I don't think my numbers are terribly strong. I'm outnumbered by the army of Italy. I just keep rolling better, and I have the defensive terrain. So I think I'm going to hold my position where I am and not do anything in either direction there. All right, that puts us to the winter. Nothing too exciting there, except that, yeah, we get to trigger another activation if we want. And we finish up the rounds with the French trying diplomacy on Denmark, which failed. That took a 2-point card for them to try that. And then the Allies playing the city, which gives them +1 to the Escalade. This card will go away, but the coalition's going to get 2 extra card draws. They're going to need it because they don't have the Brits to support them. So it's going to be a pretty big... it's a pretty big thing to have those extra cards for next turn. And now we're at the end of the activations, which means we have to check for supply for the 2 French forces that are in Britain, and I think everyone else is in supply, and for the Prussian army. And then the Prussians will be able to recover from their demoralization. I'm not sure if it's automatic, but I think it is. And then we will deal with the ugliness of Britain surrendering. Okay. So France took as their victory conditions an alliance with Naples, stripping it from the Brits, and they took the territory of Sardinia, next to their national territory in Corsica, and they took the ally of Sicily, which has no troops, and converted it into national territory. This is of some value because now they get an extra card for the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. That means they get nothing in Britain, and I believe they lose all their control markers. And Britain is out, turns out, for 3 years. And actually, that's 1, 2, 3. They come in the 4th. All nations previously allied, which are in the nation's national territory on the frontier zone. The units of the conqueror can remain or leave it. If they leave, they go to the nearest frontier zone. Well, we'll leave. That gets us to Bray. And then we can escape. Let's see how our stacking is. I'm sure we can hold all this crap. We can escape with Le Grand Army and see what we can do about the Continental Powers in 3 years. We got ourselves 4 more victory points. That puts us up to 9, but the Escalade went up 3 as well, so that's up to 4. Our goal is to increase victory points without increasing the Escalade too much, but we'll see how that all works out. I believe that's all we have for this year. And we push to another year. This one's going up. It took longer than I expected, but we had a lot of looking up the diplomatic events, etc. I think the Brits have to stop blockading where they're blockading. What the hell is this? Well, they're not blockading anymore. That's the Neapolitan Navy. That's a French ally now. All right. And one thing the French want the Neapolitans for is they can turn them into a protectorate. That ends up giving them a victory point. It increases the Escalade as well. It's not the good deal that conquering Britain is, but whatever. Yeah. Well, Britain's going to have to build themselves up so that they are not easily defeated again. Certainly the defeat looks less impressive than it is in some games. In some of them, you defeat Britain, the game's over. All right, let's send this up.